and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are tuning in from. Thank you so much for joining us today for today's panel, Your Journey from Stanford to Latin America. My name is Jessica Chung. I'm an admissions officer at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, and we're so excited to share a little bit of what it's like to live and study at the GSB and the sort of opportunities that the GSB experience can offer you, especially if you're interested in living and working in Latin America. I'm joined by an awesome panel of GSB alumni. And before I introduce them, I do want to set the stage for what our time together today will look like. So today's event will include a brief introduction to our global community. I'll then introduce you to our panelists and ask a few questions of our panelists before turning over to the Q&A box for your questions. Feel free to give the Q&A box a try. You can let us know where you're tuning in from and your name. We love getting a sense of who's in the room with us today. And altogether, we will spend about 55 minutes together. So I'm looking at the Q&A box. Hello, Jose Castellon from Chile. Hello, Paula from Colombia. Luis from Peru. Hello, Sarah from Chile. Javier from Mexico. It's so good to see you all here. It's really exciting for us to see all these names from around the world. I think in some ways that's kind of what the GSB is like. We have a truly international community. For example, our community includes 60 regional alumni clubs all over the world. We have over 30,000 GSB alumni globally. And part of the GSB experience is extending your network, broadening the people in your life and in your community, including people with many different perspectives who have experiences and can bring together all of those different experiences in one community. So that is, I think, a great part of the Stanford GSB experience. Our community also includes over 50 clubs and organizations, including regional interest groups, such as the Africa Business Club, the Business in India Club, the Europe Club, the Greater China Business Club, the Latin American Student Association, and the Middle East and North Africa Club. So I'd like to next introduce our panelists, and I might have them introduce themselves. I do know that Alice is running just a couple minutes late, so hopefully she will join us soon. In the meantime, Diego, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Diego Montaneda. I'm class of 2018. Going down my table, I did my undergrad at Williams College. My career was consulting first in California, then nonprofit in South Africa, then the GSB. Post GSB, I founded a nonprofit social enterprise called Latin American Leadership Academy, or LALA, that is based in Medellin, Colombia, but with Latin American reach.
Awesome, thank you. Juan Manuel, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Of course. Hello, everybody. My name is Juan Manuel Gonzalez, and I graduated from the GSB 5 years ago. It's hard to believe that, but time flies. I went to Texas A&M University for undergrad, and then post that I went to consulting. I actually stayed in consulting all the way to going to the GSB. And then I went back to consulting for 2 years, but then after that, I decided that it was time for me to come back to Mexico. I was doing consulting in Texas, and I returned to Mexico 3 years ago to become the CEO, Executive Director of Enseña por México, and I currently live in Mexico City.
Awesome, thank you. So I think we are still waiting on Alice to join us, which is completely fine. Before we dive into questions for our panel, I do want to note that today is just one spot on your journey. Your journey can continue onward at mystanford.mba, where you can create a profile and a personalized dashboard where you can track your application, courses and clubs at the GSB. You can find other GSB events and see more student and alumni stories. We have a really awesome set of events next week called Application Week. So they're all about the application process and helping you get across the finish line with that application. I will note one more thing. We also have a Latin American fee waiver program. So if you are from Latin America and you earn less than the equivalent of 40,000 US dollars per year, you're eligible to apply to the GSB for free. So I do want to highlight that as an awesome opportunity. And Alice, I see you joined us. Welcome.
Yeah.
So glad you're able to make it.
No, I had a technical problem because I joined, but not as a panelist. So I could hear you and see you, and I'm like, I'm here.
Oh. Well, I'm glad.
I managed to crack the problem, so that was it.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. So I'm Alice. I'm MBA 216. I was actually a classmate with Juan Manuel. I am half Brazilian, half Belgian. But I currently live in Chile. I've been living here ever since I graduated. Before the MBA, I was in finance. I did some consulting, and then after the MBA, I sort of made a career switch into marketing. And now I'm the chief marketing officer of a bank in Chile. So that's briefly my background.
Awesome. Thank you all. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you all can see us a little bit better. And to our attendees, please feel free to start submitting your questions in the Q&A box. You can also upvote other folks' questions if you see that somebody's asked a question that you're interested in the answer to. But I'll start with some of the questions that I'll start with a few warm-up questions for our panelists. So first, I'm curious, why did you decide to get an MBA, and why did you decide specifically to get a Stanford MBA?
MBA any order?
Any order.
Perfect, I'll start. The main reason why I started to get an MBA from Stanford was because I wanted to do also something with education or social entrepreneurship. And so I actually discovered when I was doing my research about MBA programs that Stanford allow you to do an MBA and a master's in education at the same time. So I did apply to both, and I completed both in 2016. But that was one of the main reasons before I even fell in love with the culture of the school. But as soon as I started to, even in the process of the admission, process, I went to visit the school, and I talked to some alumni, and I really felt that it was a place where you could be who you were, and you really could follow what you were passionate about. And that was the main reason, my love for education and management, and then the culture and the people at the school.
Awesome, thank you for that.
Should I go next? Is that okay?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
For me, first of all, I wanted to do an MBA also because I sort of felt trapped in the finance consulting world, and I really wanted to make a change in my career. And so that was one of the main reasons that I started thinking about doing an MBA. And then why Stanford? I was really drawn by the opportunities, not only at the GSB, but also like outside of the GSB. So specifically for me, the engineering school, so the design school, the engineering school, I took many classes at the engineering school, and I found those really, really enriching to the whole like business experience as well. So, and other than that, obviously the weather and the good climate, like living in Chile, it's sort of the same climate in Palo Alto. So that was really, really nice. And I was always laughing with my friends that were at Harvard, for example, who had like really cold winters, and we were like at the swimming pool in February. So that was really, really nice.
My reasons were somewhat similar to Juanma's, but slightly different. So I was in South Africa. I had been outside of Latin America maybe 10 years. I had been working at a nonprofit, so I had no savings, and I had very few networks almost nothing in Latin America. And I wanted to embark on this journey to launch a continental social enterprise and so on, which is way out of proportion for what I could do at the time. So for me, going to the GSB for a couple of years to give myself time to develop the idea, develop myself, build networks was really valuable. Also because the program that I wanted to build was focused on leadership. And from my read of different MBA programs, I almost saw the GSB as more of a leadership master's than a traditional business master's. And it seemed like it was the best one in the world. So I wanted to see from within what was so good about it, to get inspired. But I mean, both to develop myself and to become inspired for what we could build in Latin America. So yeah, those were a couple of the biggest reasons for me.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing that. My next question is, I'm wondering, what were some of the courses, experiences, or resources that you leveraged in pursuing your careers, especially as they relate to pursuing a career in Latin America? What were some of the opportunities at the GSB that helped you with that?
I don't know if Juan wants to start, but for me, most importantly, the network, given that there are not that many students, Latin American students at the GSB. I mean, there are quite a few, but you end up knowing them all. And so it's really, really easy to build networks. So my husband is also a GSB alum, and recently he was looking for a country manager for his company in Mexico. And like through the GSB network, he turned out to find one. So actually, it's been really useful, and that I think is the foremost important thing of Stanford, the network, and it's very closely knit. So it's really easy to reach out to someone. You really know the person. It's not a large class, so you end up knowing maybe 85% of your class, you really know them. So it's really good. And then the second thing I would say for me, the most instrumental class so far is still touchy-feely or interpersonal dynamics. I think that's a class that I still use daily. I actually recently bought the book that came out of the course and really helped me like recapitulate and like remember all the concepts and all the learnings that I had from that class. But I would say for me, still the most valuable class. And it sounds cliche because most alums say that, but it's really true. Yeah.
I will mention, in my case, I knew I had, similar to Diego, I had actually 10 years in the United States before starting the GSB. And I knew I wanted to return to Latin America. So a lot of my GSB experiences were around that. So I did a GMix in Paraguay. My GSP was in Chile. And then I led a GST to Panama and Honduras. So I knew that I wanted to make sure that I had the knowledge of the business culture, anything that I needed to do in Latin America, because most of my professional life had been in the United States. So I took advantage of those 2 years to make sure that I reconnected with Latin America. And like, I also would like to highlight what Ali said, is the network. I pretty much know all of the Latin American people in my class, and you get to meet the ones above, the ones below. But in particular, since I knew that I wanted to return to Mexico, I took the time to create and build those strong relationships. And most of my job that I do right now is fundraising. And thanks to the network of the GSB, I'm able to achieve the goals that I need to do for fundraising and Teach for Mexico. So I definitely see it as a place where you will create these awesome relationships that are very intimate. So whenever you reach out to them, they'll say yes to whatever you're asking of them. So those are the things that I would like to highlight.
And just for our audience, there are a couple of acronyms you threw out there. So GMix, and I think GST.
Global Management Immersion Experience, which is for 4 weeks, you get to go and work in a country where you have never worked. And a GST and Global Study Trip, the one that I did in Chile was as a participant. So it's a trip in which you go for a full week to talk to business people, to people from the cultural aspect, to actually know what it's like to do business in that country. And you also, as a second year, you can lead trips. And it is awesome because you get to talk to ex-presidents, current presidents when you're looking to organize these meetings. But I definitely recommend them because it truly allows you to see, even though it's only 7 or 8 days, we really pack those experiences, and I definitely recommend them.
Awesome, thank you.
I don't think I took any classes that were focused on Latin America. I would definitely echo the alumni network, professors. And I remember an admissions officer told me that they were the most underutilized asset at the GSB. Most professors there are top of their industry. They're total badasses. So professors, alums, almost like any class that touches on interpersonal skills, communication skills, relationship building, all of that ended up being super helpful to build my own networks. And for me, also the entrepreneurship classes like Startup Garage really helped me shift my internal chip from I have this idea that I want to build in the world to a more lean startup design thinking approach that was a lot more humble, a lot more experimental, a lot more listening involved, that I think ultimately ended up to Lala being Latin American Leadership Academy being a much more innovative, leaner, scalable venture than it would have been without me internalizing these ideas. And I'm also writing in the chat a little more on these classes.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Thank you all so much for your reflections so far. There is a question in the chat that I want to elevate. So one of our attendees asks, how would you describe the GSB community and culture? I think it's interesting that I think all three of you reflected on community, network. Juan Manuel, I think you used the word like intimate community. I'm wondering, what is it about the GSB, the community or the culture that creates this sense of closeness and this willingness to help other folks in the GSB community and network?
I will start by, go ahead, Alice.
Go.
I will start by saying that I think the GSB does a very good job on identifying very good, well-rounded human beings that are trying to really live through the motto of the GSB, change lives, change organizations, and change the world. So I think what allowed me to connect with many of my classmates was that even though we might not have shared this similar passion, in my case, it was education, what I'm passionate about, but we were so truly passionate about something in particular, but to make the world a better place, not just to make ourselves better or just to fill our ego. It was more like that. And then it also helps that the class size is not so big. So, I mean, I pretty much throughout the 2 years, I definitely can identify every single classmate by face and name. Maybe, of course, I would like if I tell you that I developed friendships with the 400, but with about 200 of them, I definitely created some connections. And then if we go to smaller, like about 10, 15 of them, there continue to be some of my closest people that I taught, even to this day, that I message, that we have Zoom calls, that we organize trips. And it has to do with that aspect that I think we are truly there to find things or tools that are going to help us to improve the world. And that is, even though it might be in a different area, we share that passion to make the world a better place.
I would say, just to add to that, I fully agree with what Juan Manuel says. I think just to add to that, I think the location also helps. Like the fact that you're not in the middle of a big city, you're close to San Francisco, but you're like 45 minutes away, an hour away. So, and sort of that sort of really we used to joke that there was this like magnetic thing around the Stanford campus that didn't allow you to get out of it, because like you feel so attracted and just everything you need is there. And so it really generates this, not only with the GSB students, but also you end up getting to know, like, for example, I lived in Escondido Village, which is like the family place. And I really got to know my neighbors. And until this day, I still have contact with most of them. And so I would say that makes it like sort of a really tight community. I think the location really helps, because I've visited other locations and other schools that you have this, if it's inserted in a city, it's less community, right? So I think that helps as well.
Super quickly, I'd say there seemed to be genuine care for each other's development. So people talk about culture of feedback, big culture of vulnerability. Like for a lot of people, it's kind of weird. So, but it can be beautiful. So make sure that you're comfortable entering a space where people will be digging into emotions and feelings and be very curious to talk about that a lot. And yeah, I would echo what Juanma said, that I think a higher than average percentage of people who really want to make a difference in the world. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you all. Yeah, I have heard before, I think on another panel, somebody said that it wasn't unusual to see a classmate cry maybe like once or twice a week. And maybe that's not true of your experience. Maybe it's just only true of her experience. And I think some of that starts, not the crying necessarily, but being vulnerable, trying to sort of figure out how to express your authentic self kind of starts in the application process. Like one of our essay questions is what matters most to you and why. And I've heard from so many students and alumni that process of reflecting and that process of introspection kind of starts with the application process. So I'm turning back to the Q&A box, and thank you to our attendees who are submitting really fabulous questions. I see that there are a couple questions about MSX, and I'm gonna defer to the MSX admissions team. If you have questions about their admissions process, I'm gonna defer to them. Please feel free to reach out to them. But there was one question about intending to stay in the US after the program and wondering if they would be able to find work opportunities in the US. Juan Manuel, you mentioned that you stayed in the US for a period of time after getting your MBA. Can you say a little bit about what that process was like? Any support or resources that you found helpful at the GSB?
Yeah, I think many of my classmates, even some of my Mexican classmates, like there were 9 of us, and half of us stay in the United States for like 1 or 2 years after the GSB. And of course, there is the support of helping you get a job with these places that are gonna get you the visa to be able to stay in the United States. So there is definitely support also from the Career Center if you need advice or what is the process to be able to stay. But there is opportunity, and like I have some of them are still there. So if you want to stay a bit longer, of course, me being an advocate for Latin America, I want you to come back. Don't stay in the United States for too long. Something that I would like to highlight is, I saw the question about the return on investment. Definitely, I think that our talent, having the privilege of going to the GSB, is way more valuable than in Latin America than if you stay in the United States. There is many more GSBers in the United States. If you come here, you are the top of the top. So you're gonna be able to get those positions that are very well paid. So the return will be there. But like me, I'm deviating from the question. But like I am a person that spent 14 years in the United States, but I can tell you that our talent is more needed here than there. So please, if you stay, only do it for a few years and then come back and do something for our countries.
I think also, Juan Manuel, to that point, like I think well, I know for the Brazilians, because I was really good friends with all of them, and like I would say, only 2 of them have stayed. Most of them stayed a few years after, and then most of them are back in Brazil now, and then 2 of them have stayed, and that's maybe because they married with Americans or with other internationals. And I would say as well for the Chileans, I think the 3 of the Chileans, well, 2 of them, well, one is back now in the US, but he came back for a long time. He did an entrepreneurship and then he went back. So I would say most of them at some point come back. So I think it's because you get more opportunities here than perhaps in the US, but not for everyone. Like there's cases that get a lot of opportunities in the US as well. So I think it's a personal journey.
Awesome. Thank you both. There's a question that I think picks up on some of the themes that you all are drawing out. Jose asks, how has the GSB community supported your career success? And Juan Manuel, well, you brought up the other question earlier about return on investment and sort of the access to distinctive opportunities that you might only find at the GSB. So yeah, how has the GSB community, even after you've graduated, continue to support your career success?
I'll let Diego start with this one because I feel like I'm always starting.
For me, it's been hugely valuable. I mean, I'm sure there may have been other ways to get connected, but for example, our main funder, we met because of a professor's introduction. Another main funder was a professor. The first foundation that supported us was an introduction by a professor. Then the first Latin American donors we found have mostly been somehow connected to the GSB. So all that has been super helpful. Also, I mean, other introductions, not just donor connected, have happened faster through GSB alumni for sure. Maybe it's in part because I mean, it's not a large community, right? Like, so definitely other MBAs will have larger alumni communities in Latin America. I don't know if they would be as responsive. I would just go to their info sessions and ask them. In my case, it has been fairly responsive. Not everyone, but most. So
yeah. In my case, I won't say that the community has helped me directly. Like I would say indirectly, because they help me like with thought processes, like what change should I make now? But I think I've made some pretty big switches in my career, even after the MBA. So I started at AB InBev in like their ZX Ventures, which is like their new product development, or how you want to call it. And then I became the CMO of a tech startup, and knowing nothing about tech and not having never worked in tech. And I became the CMO of a tech startup. And I think part of the reason I could make that change was because of like the Stanford credibility and the fact that Stanford has a focus on tech and knows a lot about, you get these entrepreneurship classes and all these vibes when you're there. And I think that's the main reason that I was able to actually make that switch that fast. So I think it gives you sort of credibility. And that really helps during your career, especially if you want to make some different changes. And then the community helps in different ways. For example, for them, it was like fundraising. For me, it's more like opening opportunities and helping think through like what should be my next move in my career. And that really has helped me having that support network to talk about those things.
I don't have anything else to add, so we can take more questions.
All right, thank you. There are a bunch of great questions in here. There are a couple that, okay, I'm going to bring together a couple questions that are in here. A few of our attendees are wondering what was your most memorable experience during your MBA experience? So most memorable experience, or the most valuable impact on you personally and professionally from your MBA experience?
Most memorable, I'll say talk. Talk is a tradition at the GSB where every Monday or Wednesday, depending on the class that you are, either whether you're first or second year, two classmates share their life story, and it can be about anything that they decide. And for me, I was able to share where I came from, my love for education and everything, and remembering seeing so many people just curious to know who I was as a person. And then also thinking of the other side, listening to all the stories of my classmates. And it makes you realize how human we are. Of course, we are all human, but like when you go to those talks, people that you never expected to have gone to very hard challenges, they actually went to very difficult challenges. People that you never knew that were like very good at a certain sport or like very good about a certain subject. That is the most memorable. And the most impact is definitely, like, I will also highlight what has been said about leadership. One class that has had the most impact in my career since I started at Enseña por Mexico has been managing growing enterprises. Like this class, I never thought that I will have to deal with writing a press release. I never thought that I will have to deal with drama between founders and board members. I never thought, like, many things that this class I learned. Now I'm looking back in retrospect and be like, literally, they teach you many of the pain points of a growing enterprise and prepare you for what you're going to be facing as a leader of an organization.
Yeah, I would my most memorable experience is I did an exchange with the Tsinghua University in China, and I had never been to China. And I think we went there, and I think it was in October or November. It was really, really cold, and I ended up having a bronchitis, and I ended up in a hospital in China. It was crazy, but like that experience was for me, and studying at the University of Tsinghua, doing that was also really, really impactful for me. And then when the Tsinghua students came back to Stanford and we got to they stayed at our houses, it was really, really a really cool program. I really enjoyed that. And then personally, I think another really memorable experience for me was just I went to the GSB with my daughter. So she was 3 when we got to the GSB, and it was just me and her. And I think, we spent 2 years there, and seeing her grow up and I mean, not grow up because she was 5 when we left, but I grow through that process and living there with her and seeing her really involved in like the Stanford, the GSB life was really impactful. And to this day, I think it really had a major impact on her and on her development. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing.
For me, I remember, I mean, it wasn't just one moment, but I remember being struck by how consistent the theories, the philosophies, the evidence were all in the direction of a particular kind of leadership that fortunately was connected to just be a better person, listen, be humble, try to do what's best for your team, your customers. When you're negotiating, it's not about crushing, it's about, finding creative win-win for both parties, and so on. So I think only one class talked more about like, ooh, by the way, don't forget about power. And it's a class called Path to Power that is kind of like the dark side class, but everything else was very much aligned. And for me, that was helpful because there's so many books out there, so many gurus, so many podcasts and articles that for me, the consistency from very successful, very thoughtful people, backed also by research, that there is this consistent narrative. It just helped me cut through so much noise. And echoing what Juan Manuel was saying, I found that the hardest challenges in this line of work have been interpersonal and intrapersonal. So I've enjoyed the GSB's emphasis that there's a lot of classes you can take on both. I wouldn't say there's just like the one class, and those have been the most impactful post GSB.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing those reflections. There are a few questions as well about what surprised you all about the GSB? What did you maybe not know that you learned during your time, or what did you not know about the GSB that you learned during your time there? Yeah, we'll start there. What surprised you about the GSB? Or even something that you wish you had known prior to your experience?
I said it earlier, but I wish I had known just the caliber of some of the professors. That, yeah, I mean, there's just so much wisdom and networks and resources behind each one of them. And if you try to get to know them outside of the GSB, there's 1,000 steps you have to get through. At the GSB, you can just take their class, you can take them out for coffee and so on. So just investing a little bit more time, not just reading the class reviews or not just reading the class description, but also trying to be like, who are these professors? And trying to build those personal connections with them, and that they are responsive. They will grab coffee with you if you're their student, mostly. I found that surprising, and I wish I had been even more intentional about that and carved more time for that.
I wish I would have known how intense it is, because it is a very, I mean, we are talking from the place that we finish and we love it and everything, but like, be prepared for a place where if you want to make your experience more enjoyable, it took me the first quarter to realize that you cannot do everything that all the opportunities are there. Like these classes can be challenging if you make them challenging. The social events, everything is like a place where, I mean, for me, it helped me that I did know what I wanted to do post the GSB. However, I recommend you that get some ideas of what you want to get out of it, because if no, you're going to confront yourself with many opportunities and you're not going to be able to do all of them. So you're going to get anxiety, stress, and FOMO and all of that. So I wish I would have known that you need to get there with more like focus. Otherwise it can be stressful.
I think for me, the thing that most surprised me is that, and they say it very graphically at Stanford in the beginning, is that we're all ducks. Like we look calm on the surface, but on the, and like under the water, we're all like paddling really, really fast. And I think what most surprised me was that first quarter, I struggled a lot, like just as Juan Manuel, especially with my daughter and dealing with all the like intellectual challenge. Like I would get home and actually be happy to be able to talk to a 3-year-old for like 2 hours, not having to say anything smart, you know? And I think that once you realize that everyone's in the same boat, like most people are paddling underwater, you sort of relax. And I think that that's the thing that most surprised me, at like realizing that most people were actually the same, you know, and I think that surprised me.
Thank you for that. I guess, Diego, you kind of touched on what you would have done differently based on what you know now. Juan Manuel and Alice, is there anything that you would have done differently based on some of those things that surprised you about the GSB or otherwise?
I only started taking courses outside of the GSB in the second year. I maybe would have done it like 1 quarter earlier, because I really like engineering and coding and things like that. And so I ended up not being able to do one coding class that I wanted to do. But I think that's the only thing that I would have done differently, like look outside of the box, really make sure that I'm taking in all of the Stanford, because the GSB is immersed in a bigger Stanford campus that I want to. That's the one thing that I think I would have done differently.
I think I'm gonna echo what Diego said about professors. I didn't develop any strong relationships with professors. I focus more on classmates. So looking back and talking to some classmates that are very good friends with professors, even after they have graduated, I wish that I will have identified. There is only a couple that I can still keep in touch, but I talked to some of my classmates that are like with 5 different professors, and they even go have coffee still, or when the professor comes to Mexico, they hang out. So I wish I would have taken advantage of that great resource that is the professors at the GSB.
Thank you all for sharing those reflections. We have a couple questions about leadership style as well. Some of our attendees are curious how your leadership style changed due to your experience at the GSB, as well as how did that affect your how did that affect your leadership in this very unprecedented time in COVID, if it did?
I would say for me, I think it did affect my leadership style. I think before that, I didn't really have that much leadership experience. Like I was in consulting, I was still like a senior analyst. So I was just leading 2 or 3 people. And then after that, I really felt like I was ready to get more, to lead bigger teams. And I think the most important thing for me, like takeaway from the GSB, has been to really meet people where they are, like understand that you have different persons in your team and they all want different things, and really try to understand what are their personal motivations, what is really important to them, and try to like really meet their development where they want to go, and give them those challenges that they really are interested in, because if they're internally motivated, they are much more productive, and you don't need to worry about retaining them, about like pay. Well, you still need to worry about that, obviously, but I mean, it's easier. It's just much easier, and you build a better team. Also, the other thing I think I would say is one of the classes I had, I don't remember which one, but it talked about if you're going to make changes in your team, and I'm talking about when you take on a new team, when you change jobs, make them once and cut deep and cut once. I think that was what they said. I think it was managing growing enterprise. I don't remember which it was, but and I think that's one of the takeaways I've had as well. Like when you have to make difficult decisions, make them once and make them so that you don't mess up the team, so that people don't start worrying like, okay, am I going to be next? Is this it or not? So I think that's been one of my big takeaways. And I would say in COVID that helped to a certain extent, where in my previous job, at the end of my previous job, we had to let go some people. So I would say that was really useful. And post-COVID, I think one of the things that really helps me now is that I try to innovate when I do meetings with my team. Like, let's not use Teams again. Let's not use Zoom again. Let's use this other app that we can do, or let's do something different. I send them coffees. I do. And I think that constant innovation is something that I really got from Stanford.
That's awesome.
For me, it has been, I wanted to be perfect before the GSB for everything that I do when I was in consulting, and I worried too much about this perfection. And after the GSB, and more like emotional perfection, never showing if I was breaking inside or anything. But the GSB, that has changed a lot. I'm definitely a more vulnerable leader. I'm not scared to say, I don't know. I'm not scared to ask for help. And COVID, this became so helpful. Like, I don't think I will have survived in the education sector, especially in the communities where we work, without asking for help to my own teams, to my board, to tell them, I need more money. Like, the organization is in danger. So like, like being able to express yourself and be vulnerable. For me, it has been how my leadership style has changed a lot. And similar to Alice, I know that people also have the vulnerabilities. And if they see the leader opening up, you're gonna know what is happening behind their mind, and it's gonna help you to identify how can you support them to even become better at the job. So definitely that's the way that the GSB changed me, and was like, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to show your emotions. And I'm not afraid anymore, even if some people that are like me, like I was before, that thought that showing emotions maybe was a sign of weakness. I don't care, because maybe that's not the type of leader that I wanna create a strong relationship. So I wanna create relationships with people that are truly vulnerable and humane. So that has helped me a lot to create, even like now, very good partnerships in the organization, because we connect with those people more.
I love all those points. I was also thinking that I think a lot of what happens at the GSB is that you get exposed to a lot of these ideas, tools, and so on, and then you just have to keep practicing them the rest of your lives. Like it's not gonna come out like I know kung fu. Like you have to keep practicing. For example, like a lot of the emotion, like connecting with your emotions, vulnerability, compassion, self-compassion. Pre-GSB, I was definitely very much up here, like post-consulting, econ undergrad, like I was very analytical. And I think I started opening up more to these things. I think it helped me on the communication side when pitching Lala. I remember getting the feedback that was like, I'm hearing that you're excited about this, but you're speaking like a consultant. I was like, oh, good point. So when I'm talking about Lala, I will let more of the emotion come out. Compassion and self-compassion, super valuable, especially over the last 2 years, both with myself and the team and students and so on. So both of those definitely helped. I forget from which classes, but at the beginning of the pandemic, we had to make a really hard choice around, do we close a program and fly all the students home, or do we keep them and hedge our bets and so on? And I remember this idea of, like, at the end of the day, if you're in a leadership position, you have to make the final call. You have to be decisive, kind of like what Alice was saying, that at some point, you just have to be decisive, make a call. But you can be inclusive. You can listen and include others. So I remember we set ourselves a 24-hour timeline to say, we're going to listen to the students, the parents, the team, donors, advisors, everyone. But this time tomorrow, we're making the call. In hindsight, that probably saved us from bankruptcy. And then it's connected to leadership and entrepreneurship. I think I really came out of the GSB having adopted the DNA of lean startup, experimentation, trial and error, prototyping, also of empowering the team to be the innovators. And I think we have come out of the pandemic. Well, we're still in pandemic, but we're stronger now than before. We have virtual programs that we had never considered before. A lot of that were team innovations. But being very comfortable with trying new things, experimenting, being comfortable with some things not working out. And again, empowering the team to speak up, take ownership, innovate, collectively, I think over time, lead to stronger teams, better organizations, and so on. So yeah, I think I credit the GSB with a lot of that.
Awesome, thank you all. I think we have time for maybe one more question, and bringing together a couple questions that I see in the Q&A. A couple of our attendees are wondering, when is the right time? How did you all know that it was the right time to pursue an MBA? If you did know, or did you take the plunge not knowing? How did you know you were ready for the experience?
Well, I think for me, it was about I had like to juggle two things. Like, is it the right moment for me? Is it the right moment for my daughter? And for me, it was sort of, it just coincided that I applied and I got to the GSB at the average age, which I think is 27 or 28. I entered the GSB when I was 28, but I started working when I was 22. So I already had like 6 years of experience, and it just coincided with my daughter still being in preschool. So for me, that was important because I wanted her to be in elementary school, like right away where she was going to be the whole elementary school. So those two things combined, like having enough experience, because I think I had a few classmates who were just out of undergrad and who maybe had taken 1 or 2 years off. And they had undoubtedly had also a very good experience, but I remember them telling me, like a few of them telling me, like, I wish I'd come a little later so I could bring more to the class, so I could give more back, because I feel like I'm only getting and I'm not returning. And I think that is sort of true. Like, I think you sort of need a certain amount of, not years, but a certain amount of experience to really be able to contribute to the discussion that goes on in every class.
For me, I remember I was ready to submit my application, and then I asked myself, okay, why the GSB? Like, why an MBA? Why the GSB? When I asked myself why now, I didn't have a good answer for myself. I had done 2 years of consulting, 2 years at a nonprofit, and I don't know why I had this idea of like 2 + 2 + 2 was a good idea, right? I was like, oh, and if I leave this nonprofit now and I graduate from the MBA, I will be under 30 with an MBA. Like, for some reason, that's a good thing to be. And for me, a couple of things pushed me to wait 1 more year. One was that at this nonprofit, I had built 2 years of knowledge, insight, skills, social capital. So I felt like I could give more to that nonprofit if I stayed there 1 more year, a third year, instead of just leaving. And 2, I didn't have almost any managerial experience. So I try to make sure I had that for at least 1 year pre-MBA. I was at the GSB ages 28, 30, so I was on the slightly older side. I feel like I got a lot more out of it than if I had gone earlier. Even now, after 3 years running Lala, I'm like, oh, I wish I could go now. I feel like I would get so much more now, just because, like, I don't know, you go through a class that touches on hiring or a class that touches on firing, and now 3 years later, I'm like, oh, what did we cover? Maybe I should have been a better student. Yeah.
In my case, it was, I guess I'm the spectrum. I applied when I was 23 to the GSB, so I was one of the young ones, but I started working at 20 in consulting, so I had 3 years of experience. But for me, it was a sense of urgency to wanting to do something for education in Latin America. And coming back, I grew up in a low socioeconomic status of Mexico, and coming back, that people were getting involved in crime. There was a lot of, in corruption, a lot of, it was very unsafe to live in the neighborhood that I was. And I was like, why am I the lucky one living in Houston, having a great life? And that's when I was like, I need to find a way to speed how can I get to a education leadership position faster? And I identified that getting an MBA at a top business school, combining with the education knowledge, will get me there faster. So that's what took me, and I knew it was the right time because the problems that I was seeing in Mexico could not wait. So I was like, I need to make this quick. So that's when I decided to apply. I got accepted when I was 23. I started when I was 24, and I don't regret it. I definitely felt that I learned a lot, but again, I come from this idea that I wanted to make things happen faster. And it really helped me because I don't think without the GSB, I would have become the executive director of a nonprofit the size that Enseña por Mexico was when I joined 2.5 years, 3 years ago.
So thank you all so much for for your candor, for sharing so much of your journeys with our audience. I will note regarding the question about how do you decide when to apply? Our community includes people with a wide range of experiences, and that includes years of work experience. As Alice mentioned, some folks might have a couple years of experience. Some folks might have over a decade of experience, and all are welcome in our application process. And we think that all of those experiences bring a perspective that enriches our educational environment. So thank you all again for sharing your perspectives with us. For attendees, we're going to throw a poll out there so you can let us know how we're doing. These events are all about serving you, so we would love to get some of your feedback about how this event has gone for you all. And thank you again for spending a little bit of your day with us, and take care. Thank you all so much.